Today we're going to talk about the psychology of making an ex chase you. So I figured the best way to approach this topic of the psychology of making exes chase you was not by going through a step-by-step scenario, because I've done that before and quite frankly most people get bored when I do that, but instead creating the perfect combination, the perfect cocktail, if you will, of scenarios or events that need to occur or factors that need to be present in order to make it likely that an ex will chase you. Now, each one of the things that I'm going to talk about on this video today is going to be based on real-life research from real-life psychologists, but also from real-life success stories that we have had come through our program and seen success with. So, let's start from the top. What factors need to be present in order for an ex to chase you? Factor number one, playing hard to get. So what do I mean when I say play hard to get? Well, according to Harry Reis, a professor of psychology and Dean's Professor in Arts, Sciences, and Engineering at Rochester, he says playing hard to get makes it seem as if you are more in demand. We call that having a higher mate value. I think probably the best way to steep this in reality is by looking at simple supply and demand rules. Perhaps one of the most brilliant holidays, if you can even call it that, is Black Friday. So growing up, my parents on Thanksgiving just focused on Thanksgiving. But what I came to realize upon marrying my wife was that there's lots of deals that occur on Black Friday, that Friday at midnight after Thanksgiving. And what you see when you go out into the masses to try to get these big deals is just how many people flock to the stores. And ultimately, it's kind of a supply and demand scenario. The demand is obviously there for a great deal, but the supply isn't very high. There's only 100 new TVs that have this 50% off tag, and people just go crazy tripping over themselves trying to get these deals. Well, the same thing applies to actual relationships. As long as the supply is low and the demand is high, you are perceived as having a higher value. You're a better deal, if you will. Now, what seems to trip most men and women up is the fact that when they go through a breakup, their ex inherently knows the supply is high. They know you want them back, especially if you have anxious type of behaviors and you exhibited them after the breakup. AKA begging for your ex back, showing up on their doorstep, trying to ask for them back, getting jealous, getting overly jealous. You get the picture here. So perhaps the best tip I can give you, if you don't want to seem like you're too easy, is to act not as available. So a lot of men, I notice, have a problem with this on ex-girlfriend recovery, specifically because what happens is they pick up their phone the first time or respond immediately the first time their ex contacts them because they've been waiting for months to get this type of a response. That is something that you would do if you were way too available. But if you're not as available, all of a sudden the demand goes up because they know the supply goes down. But this brings up an interesting question. How do you show your ex that you are not in high supply? Well, ultimately, I think there's three main factors here. The first one is dating other people. Sometimes going on a date with other people, even if you're not intending on falling in love and finding someone new, can help show your ex that you're not just waiting around for them. The second thing is more of an internal-based thing. You want to show your ex that you're over them emotionally. Now, this actually helps on many different factors, especially during no contact, but specifically it helps the third factor that we're going to talk about here. And that's suddenly ending conversations. I'm famous for saying it doesn't really matter who starts the conversation. What matters is who ends the conversation. So what you want to have happen if you want to show your ex that you're not in high supply is engage them in a conversation, make sure that conversation is pleasing, and then suddenly drop out of the conversation. That's very difficult to do if you haven't gotten over your ex emotionally. Now, when I say getting over them, I don't mean like kick them to the curb and never think about them again. I'm saying you need to get to a place emotionally where you're going to be okay knowing you may not get them back. And that's fine. That's what you're shooting for. Hey there, real quick before we get you back to your video, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, well, please do that. It really does help. It helps keep our video editors paid. It helps us keep doing these high quality videos. And it's really 5 seconds out of your day to click one little button. So if you could, please just click the subscribe button. No harm, no foul if you're not interested, but we figured we'd try. All right, let's get you back to your video. Factor number 2, the misattribution of emotions. This is maybe one of my favorite concepts ever. And it was made popular by an MIT behavioral economist named Dan Ariely. Here's the basic kind of concept. Sometimes we have an emotion and we don't know where it's coming from, so we stick it onto something that seems sensible. We basically misattribute those emotions onto something that makes sense for the scenario that we're in. So to give you actual real life scenarios of how this happened, they did studies on a band. So the band was setting up, and this is not the type of band where you go to a concert and they just play set after set after set after set. This is kind of a band where they play a set, then there's an intermission, and then they play a set and a set. So here's what they did. They had the audience come in and rate each band member's attractiveness level by whatever they did, guitar, singer, drums, bass, whatever. So what they did was people would rate the attractiveness level from a 1 to 10 scale, and they would say the guitarist is a 6 attractiveness level, the bassist is a 7 attractiveness level. They just went like that for each single band member. Then they had the bands play. So after 2 hours or so, they had the band take an intermission, and then the researchers came out and asked the audience again, rate the attractiveness level of the band members 1 through 10. Each single band member saw an increase in attractiveness level. This is misattribution of emotions at its height. Basically, when you're sitting there listening to the music that these people are creating, it creates emotions within yourself. Sometimes you're touched, sometimes you're rocking out, I don't know. But what happens is your brain needs some place to label those emotions on. So rather than labeling the emotions onto something that doesn't make sense, we try to label the emotions into something that does make sense, which of course would be the people who produce the music. Hence, they get an attractiveness boost. Now, this can also backfire. One of the funny stories that I don't remember if it was Dan Ariely who said this or someone else, but when I was first learning about misattribution of emotions, someone also was wanting to implement it in their love life. So they took their date on this really adrenaline-filled sort of tour ride. They were with a bunch of other people. There was a tour guide. This person took the person out on a date, and it was super adrenaline-filled, and they were trying to have the adrenaline excitement of whatever this tour was be misattributed to them. Well, it worked. The girl that this guy was on a date with said, "Wow, this is so exciting. Isn't that tour guide so hot?" So what happened was they went through this really exciting bungee jumping course or whatever it was. It doesn't really matter. I can't remember off the top of my head. And instead of misattributing the emotions you feel from that onto the person she was on a date with, she misattributed it to the tour guide, the guy who was giving sort of the thing. So it can backfire, but here's the ultimate point that we're trying to get across. If you want your ex to fall back in love with you, if you want them to chase you, and you want to implement the misattribution of emotions concept, probably the best thing for you to do is do something with your ex that will create feeling within her or him. You're going to want to do something exciting, touching, intimate. I don't know, but anything that is outside that you're doing something fun with that she'll have emotional reaction to or he'll have an emotional reaction to, that they can literally stick those emotions onto you, and it raises your attractiveness level. Factor number 3, the newness factor. We live in a society where we are obsessed with new things. We see this in every single facet of our life, right? You just simply go to Google, and what's interesting is when I was a kid and I would do a Google search, I would be amazed at just the amount of content that was out there. It was kind of like the world's biggest library. But what's now happening is I look at the dates on the articles and when they were published, and I'm almost like, well, that was like a week ago. That's not new anymore. What new things have happened? You see this throughout our entire society, right? New car, new house, new girlfriend, new boyfriend, all of these things, there's kind of this alluring factor to newness. Now, what does that mean? Well, A lot of times this is a huge explanation for why we have an issue with the grass is greener syndrome. After all, isn't a breakup nothing more than someone admitting that they think they can do better than you? Hence, they think they can find someone new that will better fit their needs. Ultimately, what you're going to want to do if you want to tap into the newness factor is try to find some new layers to yourself that your ex hasn't peeled back. One of the most interesting insights we had when we actually interviewed someone going through a breakup was the fact that their reasoning for the breakup wasn't what you would think. It was the fact that they had this idea of reality versus expectations. Their expectations didn't quite meet reality. And what I mean by that is they thought this person was kind of deeper than they were. But when they peeled back all the layers, they kind of got to the center and was like, that's it. And it kind of was a turnoff for them. So what you can do is add new facets to yourself that you've never maybe talked to your ex about that kind of creates new layers. There's nothing like shifting a paradigm to make someone sort of look at you in a new light. And then finally, factor number 4, the self-fulfilling attachment circle. Right, so what you need to understand is that most of the time, the reason breakups occur is because of attachment styles. There's this often huge gulf between people or our clients, right? So what we've noticed is there's 4 main attachment styles, right? There's this secure attachment, which is kind of like the holy grail, the anxious attachment, who exhibit anxious behaviors after a breakup. Then you have the avoidant attachment, who kind of avoid breakups or enjoy their own space so much that they want intimacy, they want to be close with someone, but ultimately they can't get close to someone because they continue to push them away when they kind of feel like their own personal freedom is being stepped on. And then you have the fearful attachment style, which kind of combines the worst scenarios of anxious and avoidant together. But what's interesting is when we actually did research, we found that most of our clients tend to have anxious attachment styles, whereas their exes tend to have avoidant attachment styles. And this creates a self-fulfilling attachment circle. So you have this constant push and pull between people with anxious attachment styles and people with avoidant attachment styles. So the anxious party will often complain that their partner is not reciprocal with their love. They'll say, I try, but you don't try. The avoidant responds to this by being quiet, using silence. They don't know how to respond, but internally they are getting frightened. When it boils to a head, they accuse the anxious person of being too much. And then ultimately this causes a fight. The avoidant person breaks up with the anxious person, and then the circle kind of flips. Because what we know about people with avoidant attachment styles is if you have an avoidant attachment style, you tend to not begin to romanticize or have nostalgia about your past relationship until you've kind of moved on from that past relationship, or rather your ex has moved on. So what tends to happen is we're seeing a lot of successes occur when the anxious person kind of gets over the breakup and moves on. So this is an important concept for you to understand, because one of the best things you could do psychologically to help win your ex back is quite literally to get over them, because you will submit the proper signals that will ultimately make them want to come back. Hey there, if you're interested in learning how to get your ex back, probably the best thing for you to do is just stop by our website, www.exgirlfriendrecovery.com, and take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz. It's a free, simple 2-minute quiz designed to basically tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back. Now, all you have to do if you're interested in this quiz is simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click the link you see there. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, but most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you could do that, that would be incredibly awesome. I'll see you next time.